Welcome to the lair.
For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the brand newly released NVIDIA DGX Spark. Now, I did just go and purchase this myself from my local micro center about an hour ago. Just picked it up. Time to go set it up. I will say there were not a lot of people there, so I was able to get my hands on one, which is good. However, I want to go ahead and kind of do an honest review, being that I did purchase this myself with my own money. And one of the things I noticed first and foremost in some of the initial review videos of this is that it almost felt like the person was kind of talking how they would if they were trying to get you to go on a date with maybe their ugly friend, where they're like, well, it has a great personality. Like, it's slow, but it has a great personality. I don't know how I feel about that, so I want to go ahead and test this. And the main thing we're going to be doing is basically testing this against the actual Nemesis, which a lot of folks are going to compare it to, which is the AMD Strix Halo 128 gig machine. So both of these have 128 gigs of unified memory. They are both poised as AI prosumer devices, and realistically, I want to do head-to-head with both of these because, I don't know, I feel like it'll get views. So with that, feel free to subscribe, and we will get into our video, starting with an unboxing of this, in my opinion, very aesthetically pleasing little device. So I'd like to start out by just doing a simple unboxing, and depending on how long it takes me to actually unbox this, I may time-lapse portions of this, but I did want to do it in real time instead of like a voiceover where you just see my hands, as I figure, you know, we might get some cool unboxing ASMR. No, but with that, as I snake my hand around this microphone, and I'm realizing this is probably a proper way to actually do an unboxing. Now I see why. So first and foremost, we have these bidirectional cardboard pull tabs, which we can go ahead and remove, which will then, okay, well, glad I got that on video because that was not my fault. So with those out, we do see also there are like some specifications and things on the back of the box here, but obviously we will get into seeing more of that now. And as I go ahead and flip this back around, we now get to the exciting part. I will say the box is heavier than I expected. I don't really know what I was anticipating, but the device seems so, oh crap. All right, that's really nice. That is a decent presentation. It's just kind of like presented itself to me. Very cool. All right, so this is actually my first look at this thing. First impressions, it's quite cool looking. I'm personally a fan of the gaudiness of this gold color scheme. Obviously, there will be other manufacturers who have more tame designs, but I kind of like it. Ooh, okay. It's very cold. It's very metal. And it is relatively small. Okay, fingerprint magnet alert first and foremost, but that's okay. I can't imagine you'll really be handling this too much. There is like some interesting reflectiveness to the back here, as well as these panels. Now, something I've been wondering since I first saw the reflections, or not the reflections, I'm still thinking of this. Since I first saw the photos of this is, are these like pinch tabs or pull tabs? I don't think they, no, they're not, okay. And then this is, it's like a pumice rock. I don't know, you may have to Google that term, but it's like the volcanic rock that solidifies. This is kind of the, not, all right, well, all right, so this is rubber down here, this foot pad, which is good. We have some USB-C ports, Ethernet, a HDMI, and then SFP, or I don't fully remember what those are called, but they're for high-speed networking of multiple devices of these. And what I would assume to be a power button, now marred by my fingerprints. First impressions, it's very dense feeling, and I kind of like that, so, all right. I suppose we can continue the unboxing now. There's inevitably just going to be a power supply and some other pertinent documentation in here. Power brick that is probably about 40% of the size of the actual Spark itself, so I mean, I guess, you know, that's partially why it's so small, because the power supply unit is kind of external to it. So, but overall, that's all right. It does have NVIDIA labeling and branding on it. And I guess that was a fairly simple and quick unboxing. Nothing else really in there, which is totally fine. And we can now move on to actually playing with it. All right, so I'm not going to do a full in-depth kind of like setup tutorial, but I will run through some of these steps, perhaps fast forward where I deem necessary, and just to get a general feel of how this thing is actually to set up. First and foremost, it is telling me to connect my keyboard. There we go. All right. User error. So, all right, let's set up your new personal AI supercomputer. Let's do it. Time zone. Oh, that's too much work. I'll just leave it in UTC. All right. English sounds good to me. We have a terms of use, which of course we will just kind of verbosely read through. Okay, do I want to share things? I don't want to share analytics and usage data. Oh, but the only way to actually share crash and failure data is to have that set. I'll just share the crash and failure data in this video if we do have any of that. All right, now it's going to give us the option to connect to Wi-Fi. I'll say, first impressions here, the animation and stuff in this actual UI setup is, I like it. I'm a fan of this. It looks like a proper result from like one of our vibe coding tests or something like that. And I mean that in a positive way. I like this. I'm going to say first impressions, I don't hear this thing making any noise whatsoever. It's metal, so it's going to be cold unless it's on. It's lukewarm, I suppose I would say, and kind of gently caressing the external case. All right, so it's going to update our system, which I suppose is fine. All right, so to be completely honest with you, I left to go do something. It was updating, now it's at this screen, so hopefully we're closer. I would perhaps appreciate a bit more information of, what the going on right now, but, aside from that, maybe it's installing updates. All right, finally, it booted up or did whatever it needed to do without giving us much information at all throughout the process, but we did make it here, so that's good. So, all right, our first time logging into the Spark. All right. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going to turn those cookies off. All right, let me take this in for a second, and then we'll go ahead and kind of see. All right, we can see right here we have 128 gigabytes of unified system memory, of course, and a disk capacity of 4.1 terabytes. However, you probably know like some of the more raw tech specs of this, but I did just want to kind of come in here real quick and see what we have in terms of the information. So now, basically, it opens us to this web page right here, and okay. I like that it has Firefox preloaded. I'm very pleased to see that. First time here. All right, so we're met with the something called playbooks, which I would assume are akin to cookbooks, which are, a more common term. But all right, let's explore some of these and see what's up. I like what I'm seeing here just in terms of the fact that it actually gives you a time estimate for each one of these things. So I've been messing around with this for a few hours now, and some of the things I've done so far are, one, find there is a specific build for LM Studio for the DGX Spark, which we can see right here. So this is fairly easy to download and get running, but you need to make sure you install Fuse to actually open this app, or nothing will happen and you will become quite frustrated. But with that, I am doing this just because I want to have a similar testing environment to showcase, even just visually, this versus the Strix Halo. So for now, I'm downloading the Llama 3.3 70B at Q4 because I do want to test dense model performance as well, as that is important. I did download that here with the default kind of NVIDIA example that they have here with OpenWebUI and OLLAMA, and it responded to me here, and it's showing 1.55 tokens per second. I want to not believe that that is the case because that would be embarrassingly slow. So we're going to just test it again in LM Studio, and we'll test some other models as well. In addition to that, I did go ahead and run the example here for Comfy UI. This is personally something I have not really used at all, and just personal preference, I absolutely hate the, like, whatever this would be referred to as, the layout would, I hate this. It's nothing personal. I just extremely hate it. And all this stuff here is just like, okay, that's great. I don't want to see that though. Like, generate something funny. So, but it does actually do a fairly decent job with both image and video generation. Basically, we can go ahead and kind of change a prompt right now and then run something. Keeping in mind, I'm looking at it through NVTop right here, and none of the ways I see like NVTop or NVIDIA SMI, which is kind of the default monitoring program for the graphics hardware, Neither of them actually show like any amount of video RAM utilization here, so there must be some other way to go ahead and... Okay, well, we have this right here, but normally NVIDIA SMI would just kind of show the memory utilization like right here in an easier to see way. I'm sure there's a way around that. It's just, a little odd. So here I'm running a video generation using this Comfy UI workflow for Qwen 2.2 14B text to video, or T2V, and we're essentially just going to see a few things here beyond just the actual video show up when it is completed. So this right here is just going to give us a little insight in the actual speed of what's going on here, and then if we look to the bottom right here, NVTop will just kind of show us at least the temperature, the amount of power that's being drawn by the chip, and the utilization of the GPU. So just to give some like kind of pertinent information about its video generation speed. Now, I want to reiterate that I dislike Comfy UI. I'm not a fan of image or video generation, really. Like, I don't use them very often, so I don't understand how to use this tool. With that, we're just using like the default workflow here, so please keep that in mind when I'm actually showcasing this, is that those who are interested in using this tool and know how to use it, just pay attention basically to the speed right here to give yourself some metric as to how this is performing comparably to whatever you actually use for this currently. And we can see it's under fairly heavy load here, with the temperature kind of staying between high 60s and mid 70s in Celsius. It's really not making any noise at all. I don't hear any fans. I hear like a small, really high-pitched hissing noise when it's really under heavy load, but it's not making much sound at all, which I guess is okay, but part of me wonders if this thing was like a few inches bigger in either direction and had a beefier cooling system, if that would maybe help longevity. Obviously, this just came out today, so I can't really definitively make any statements about that, but I think keeping things cooler is always better, even if we have to sacrifice a little bit of space, because this thing really is extremely tiny, and I don't know, I guess that's just kind of what it is. And we can see right here that this image generation task is still ongoing and should hopefully be finished a little bit soon. We can see previously that we have some metrics here, which we will also get upon the completion of this, which will obviously make more sense to those who are more interested in using these forms of video generation models. All right, so the case is kind of hot. They're doing that. It was 104.9 degrees. So 105 degrees just with a laser thermometer on the case. If I point it now, it is cooling down. It's only 102 now. Obviously, I think under really prolonged kind of duration of something like that, it would definitely get rather hot. We have some form of video here, which, I mean, seems, okay, that, I didn't really, my prompt was not necessarily reflective of this, but I suppose this did a good job in showing the, the video generation duration, and obviously it's seemingly somewhat happy here. I'm going to do another video generation here just so we can have another reference point, I suppose, for how long it takes, as well as being able to keep an eye on the actual temperature of the system, as well as the power draw throughout the duration of this video generation task. And again, this is a very off-the-shelf kind of workflow. I just opened this and selected the one text to video, and this is the 14B variant, so I had to download the files and place them in the subsequent folders, which was very simple. And then basically I was able to go ahead and start generating things. All right, and our result finished right here, which was just kind of supposed to be like a neon lit features cityscape style thing. All right, that's pretty cool. Okay, that's very cool. That is a really solid result, and this is going to probably highlight one of the better parts of this machine, although I frustratingly am not really able to see the specific VRAM utilization right here while this is going on. But putting that aside right now, just the ability to run these larger and more performant video generation models in a tiny little box like this that's not really taking up a huge amount of power is very cool. And this is definitely one area where this is going to at least currently excel over the Strix Halo, because that has more experimental support for video and image generation tasks. And without a mature software stack kind of like this, with the years of kind of CUDA being built up and used for a lot of machine learning things, that gives this a big kind of lead in terms of some of these image generation tasks and things like that. Now, with that, this really is a very cool generated result. And obviously, this is open source Alibaba One video generation model. Now let's just go ahead quickly and go into an image generation workflow, which is actually the default thing that they give you in the instruction here for Comfy UI. So if you follow these instructions here that you see in the homepage that the DGX Spark first boots up to basically when it opens the browser, this is all it is. So it's the simple stable diffusion checkpoint, and we'll go ahead now and just basically generate an image or two. I've now gone ahead and placed the same prompt that we had with that video generation right here, and I'm going to click run, and this will happen much quicker in the stable diffusion generation right here. So we can see the entirety of this duration was around 6.4 seconds. Now, again, this generated result is perhaps artistic, but it was very quick, and I don't know how resource intensive this specific model that they've chosen to highlight this with is. Obviously, folks can use the Flux models and a variety of different things, but beyond really trying to get into every single one and test them intricately, the whole point of this is that image generation is something, and video generation, that is possible on this device, and the speed is hard for me to personally gauge because I don't really use these tools very often, so I don't have a good measure of how this would perform on something like the 3090 Ti's behind me or something of the sort. So I just want to show these things in terms of this, but maybe allow the audience to kind of make their own judgment here. And I figure we can do a couple more image generations because they do happen relatively quickly. So oh, okay. So that was a prompt that was basically just stolen from this little paragraph about LM Studio being able to run on this device. I suppose I do have enough mental capacity to perhaps figure some of these things out on the fly. So let's do a 1024 by 1024 image. Okay, it seems to be okay with that. And then we'll see kind of how that affects things. Okay, so obviously it's going a bit slower now, which is a good sign for my on-the-fly adjustment having worked favorably or successfully. And we can see the utilization here is, of course, heavy, I guess is one way to put it. All right, and that took a decent bit more time here, but we did get a generated image that was twice the size since I changed it. So, and again, this is a whole other world of exploration and using these models and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of show this doing these things. But now I think something that myself included, a lot of folks are going to be more interested in is the actual performance of this thing running LLMs, especially comparatively to the Strix Halo. So being that I have LM Studio all set up on this machine right here, I think my model is still downloading. Okay, yes it is. It's going rather slow as well. So I'll just wait for this to go and then we'll do some head-to-head and LLM benchmark testing. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at something that a lot of folks are going to be very interested in, which is the actual speed of this thing in running models. Now, a disclaimer right here, a lot of folks have done very detailed analysis and benchmarks of this with a bunch of different metrics and how it runs models, from processing speed, token speed, prefill, every single metric you can think of has been covered. There are videos out there for that, and truthfully, I am not very into that sort of deep analytical thing. So, with that, we're basically going to be focused on token speed here, and obviously the whole point of what I want to do is actually compare this head-to-head with the Strix Halo. So we'll play with some LLMs on this for a bit, but then we're going to move into a more battle-focused section of the video where we'll put this head-to-head. So right here we have Llama 3.370B at a Q4 quantization loaded in with the maximum context length of 131 something. 131072, and I'm going to just send it a nice hello message. Hey, how are you? And we'll basically see what it responds. All right, and I'm seeing good news here. So for some reason, the same model was showing 1.5 tokens per second in the actual NVIDIA demo with OpenWebUI and Ollama, which was quite perplexing. So right here, we're getting 4.44 tokens per second, which is still relatively slow. And this is going to highlight one of the downsides of these unified memory machines. They have lots of memory, but the actual speed, the bandwidth, is not necessarily super high. So when running, especially models like this, which are dense models, the token speed is going to be fairly slow. This is significantly slower than what I would be getting with the same exact model, though not with the context length maxed out on the dual 3090 Ti system behind me. So that is just something I would like to kind of make note of, and that is why I want to test this with a dense model, because I didn't really see anyone else doing it. Everyone was using GPT-OSS, which is more in the favor of making these machines look good. So with that, let's do some long context testing. Sorry for the weird angle, but I am trying to monitor both of these at the same time. So essentially what I've done right here is not going to be a very scientifically sound test. However, it is just kind of a way to demonstrate some of the downsides of these small unified memory machines with low bandwidth comparatively to something that has a bit more kick to it, I suppose could be said. So both this DGX Spark right here and then the desktop behind me, which is a dual 3090 Ti system with 128 gigs of DDR4 CPU memory, have been loaded in with Llama 3.3 70B at a Q4 quantization in LM Studio, and they both have the context length set to the maximum of 131,000 and change. Now I've gone ahead and pasted the entire text of the Great Gatsby book, which is around 69,500 tokens, and I've just simply pressed enter once pasting it in. Now the DGX Spark has been processing the prompt, I think, between like 15 and 20 minutes now. And when that was at around 70 something percent processing, I went ahead and did the same exact thing in the dual 3090 Ti machine. And that is now at around 88% processing prompt. So it's going to be fairly close which one finishes first, but keep in mind that the DGX Spark was somewhere in the 70% processing prompt when I actually pasted the prompt into the dual 3090 machine. So this is just going to kind of highlight, I suppose, one of the negatives of a machine like the Spark or the Strix Halo. There's too many names, I get confused. And that is basically the relative slowness for handling longer contexts or larger dense models. So basically, it seems like the Spark is going to finish first, but obviously it did have like a 70 something percent head start. But I am also interested to see how the actual generation speed is of whatever specific result we do get from having just pasted the entirety of a book to this model. So that'll be something else to see. And then basically, I'm not going to do too much of a comparison with the big beefy machine behind me, as the Strix Halo is definitely the direct competitor to the Spark right here. So that's what we want to see. But I will say, the Spark right now, in doing this same task that the machine behind me is doing, is currently using 48 watts of power as reported by NVTop, whereas the machine behind me, the cards are kind of going back and forth. I just saw one of them pull 250, the other one's pulling like 180. So the amount of power that the machine behind me is using is significantly higher than what a unified memory system like the Spark or the Strix Halo would be using, in the downside trade-off of a bit slower speed. So I have to say, actually the token speed that we're getting right here on the Spark is actually quicker than I expected it to be, considering it just ingested a 70,000 token prompt. So that's actually impressive, and we should see the 3090 machine go ahead and start responding now. Interesting. So the 3090 machine, interestingly enough, is basically choking now in terms of generation speed, and that is partially because I don't have all of the model layers offloaded that I perhaps could onto the GPUs, so it is relying more on its CPU memory, but I was just having trouble getting it to actually like load in. So yeah, it seems to be behaving oddly, but I now hear some very like electrical buzzing from the Spark. But I will say the Spark here speed-wise is actually doing better than I thought it would be. Prompt processing speed here in the same test was garbage. It was crap. But the actual generation speed, once that's been done, is actually impressive to me right now. Now something, and I want to put the thermometer on it again real quick. Yeah, so it's It's like that back left corner. I just saw 110 on the thermometer, so there's 109.6. So I do kind of, it's a little hotter. I would have liked it to be a little larger with maybe a bit of fan noise. Okay, so we got a total speed of 2 tokens per second in our response in the Spark, and the total speed before I just stopped it out of frustration for the desktop machine behind me was 0.14 tokens per second. But again, that is partially due to some misconfigurations on my end. However, the prompt processing speed differential was significant in the favor of the dual 3090 desktop. So something I'd like to do now as a last comparison test between these two machines before we go into just a Strix Halo comparison test is, I will minimize that. I think we're going to, let's just make a new chat, and I have the context length set to maximum for both of these. So I want to actually not do that, and I want to load this model entirely in the GPUs of the system behind me, but I will have to drop the context length. So I've just written tell me a story into both of these. They're both loaded in with a simple context length of 4096, so nothing major, and the dual GPU desktop behind me has the model loaded entirely into video RAM. So here we should see a relatively stark speed differential, obviously. And again, this is kind of just the downsides of the lower memory bandwidth. However, again, I will mention that the system behind me is using over 600 watts of electricity just for the GPUs right here. They're both over 300 for a second there. So upsides and downsides. All right, so comparison here with everything relatively similar. The DGX Spark got 4.41 tokens per second when generating our story, and the dual 3090 Ti system got 18.75 tokens per second. So a significant speed increase in the dual GPU desktop, with the downside of increased power consumption, noise, and pretty much everything else negative about like electricity use. Welcome to the lair. All right, so for probably the final head-to-head test in this video, we're obviously going to pit the two competitors against one another. And this is something that regretfully I really didn't see in any of the kind of sponsored videos about this device. So I want to go ahead and give the people what they want, myself included, which is basically putting this head-to-head, same models, same scenarios, same setting, against the 128GB unified memory Strix Halo from AMD. So obviously this is going to be a little harder to film, so please keep in mind that some of the actual token speed and things like that may just be like a phone camera recording a screen. I'm doing the best I can. So with that, we're basically going to jump right in right now and begin testing these two in a true head-to-head fashion. All right, so I have to apologize, but the way I kind of have to film this is just by hand, as I don't have an interface that will record both of these at the same time. This is the Spark. I just want to show that they have the exact same settings in LM Studio right here. So we have the Spark right there. And then of course we have the Ryzen Strix Halo, which has too many different names. And all of these settings are exactly the same. So we're basically just going to ask them each for a story, and we'll go ahead and compare the total prompt and everything speed. So I've just written tell me a story in both of these, and I'm going to put this down to press enter at the same time, and then I will pick it back up in 3, 2, 1. All right, so now we can go ahead and see our response, keeping in mind that the DGX Spark is here on the left and the Strix Halo is here on the right. Now the Strix Halo is definitely going to be louder, and I'm just noticing that both of the stories are quite similar. Once upon a time in a small village. They both started that way. So all right, so the Strix finished first, but that doesn't mean anything except the story was perhaps a bit shorter. So we're not going to pay any mind to any of the statistics we see yet until the Spark finishes its story as well. All right, finally, after ages, the Spark finished its significantly longer story. So let's go ahead and just take a peek at the actual results we have right here. For the Strix Halo, we got a total of 4.97 tokens per second, 819 total tokens, and 0.86 seconds to the first token. Over here in the DGX Spark, we got 4.67 tokens per second, 1,266 total tokens, 0.53 seconds to first token. So, interestingly, we see that it seemed the Spark started to respond a bit quicker. However, overall, the Strix Halo was actually a negligible bit faster, but interesting as, in head-to-head test. So basically, let me try to clean up my camera angles and stuff, and we'll do some more testing. I have them both downloading Qwen3 Coder now, so we'll go ahead and see how they do in generating some perhaps longer scripts. So for this test, we're going to be using Qwen3 Coder 30B at a context length of 32,768, which I know is a teeny bit low, and that's all right. So I just want to show this so we can verify that both machines have the exact same setting, and then we'll go ahead and load this in. And I will probably just ask it for a browser-based operating system or something like that, but truthfully, we're going to be less interested in the actual generated results as we are going to be in the token speed. All right, so both prompts are typed in, and I will just place this down real quick as I press enter on both simultaneously in 3, 2, 1 now. And all right, we see obviously that they are starting out very similar, being that this is, the same exact model. So I'll scroll this down a bit, so hopefully it will continue to auto scroll. And I do actually have the thermometer here, so we can perhaps try to get some temperature readouts of these things. Obviously, this little guy is significantly louder, as it does have a big fan right there. Maybe I shouldn't point it right on the fan. All right, well, I'm not really seeing anything outrageous here right now. Let's try this one. And nothing outrageous on here either, so that's good to see. All right, both systems have finished, so let's go ahead and take a look at our final speed results. So first up, let's start with the Spark. We got 38.03 tokens per second, a total generation length of 11,400 tokens, and 0.42 seconds to first token. Over in the Strix Halo, we have 35.13 tokens per second, a total result of 11,866 tokens, and 0.13 seconds to first token. So overall, again, very close. This time the Spark was negligibly a bit faster, and I embarrassingly have forgotten which one was faster in the dense 70B test, but they were both, they're extremely close as well. So here's what we're going to do. All right, we do have to take a look at these just, but I will download a GPT-OSS-20B MOE as the final test. All right, so as we wait for our final model to download, we can see both browser OS results were extremely similar, which, is not really very surprising. The one that the Spark did start out with some of these windows open. This is a very nice, like, Windows XP style. I have to say, I am a big fan of it. There is some more color in this result here, as well as the actual kind of start bar being seemingly a bit more full. And this one, is a bit more lackluster, but perhaps utilitarian, I suppose, could be said. Yeah, I just wanted to put that in because I wanted to see what they looked like. Obviously, it has nothing to do with the actual specific machine here, but we'll wait for GPT-OSS now and then wrap it up. So for the final test, we're going to try OpenAI's GPT-OSS-20B. Now, I have it set to both just at the context length of 8,192. For some reason, the Strix is being a pain in the butt when I raise that higher, and partially I don't have that unified memory kind of hack done right now, so I have VRAM allocated statically in the BIOS because I like being able to see utilization in NVTop, but that is probably for a different video. So both of these have the same thing, and this is a little handicapped due to the Strix, so I will be just completely transparent about that. This thing could probably load it in at full context, but in just doing a speed comparison, we have to just keep it low. All right. I have given them both the prompt with the reasoning effort set to high, explain the concept of quantization to an 85-year-old, so we can just go ahead and start them one by one. Obviously, this model will be extremely fast on both of these machines, and we do first start out just seeing the actual chain of thought, or the thinking process, being that GPT-OSS is a reasoning-capable model, and we do have it set to high. So, wow, they're both like really... This thing loves tables, I noticed too. The GPT-OSS models absolutely love using tables in their responses. This had 64.7 tokens per second, a total result of 1,600 tokens and 0.19 seconds to first token. The DGX Spark over here had 60.33 tokens per second, a total of 1,365 tokens and 0.44 seconds to first token. So very interesting, a bit faster in the Strix. All right, just as like a bonus round, I loaded in a Q8 of Qwen3 0.6B into either of these and have said, tell me a wild story. Obviously, this is just going to be extremely, extremely fast. Okay, so as we said, we got a total of 174.29 tokens per second in the DGX Spark, total speed of so 525 tokens total, and you can see there, I mean, this is more of just a fun test. And then about 10 tokens per second slower in the Strix Halo, we got 163.78 tokens per second. So that is obviously just a very tiny lightweight model. But as the kind of last thing we did in a head-to-head test, I wanted to do something kind of fun. So let's basically talk about everything that we experienced today and come up with a overall, I suppose, takeaway from today's video. First and foremost, this thing is extremely well built. I am very enamored with the aesthetic qualities here. Perhaps I am a fan of gaudy design, as this is obviously very gold, which I guess I am a fan of. It has the porous front, which you can actually blow in through to prove to yourself that the airflow does actually make its way from the front to the back or vice versa. So that is cool. It's heavy, it's well built, it looks and feels very good in the hand. Aside from that, which obviously the aesthetic and kind of physical qualities are less important for a device that is designed to do work or provide value to the consumer, that is perhaps where it becomes a little more kind of convoluted. So I would essentially view this as like a flow chart. If you're somebody who needs this to actually develop applications for its larger siblings, which are then going to be deployed to very expensive cloud clusters, this is absolutely a no-brainer device, because you're not going to be able to get something with this much memory that actually has CUDA support and everything like that in the NVIDIA ecosystem for this price. And that provides a significant value for those specific individuals. Unfortunately, and the way I see it is for the other 95% of us, I don't know necessarily that the value is here for this, and I'm not really going to sugarcoat it. I find that this is simply far too expensive considering the current state of when it was released as well. It is the later half of 2025. It's closer to 2026. If this had come out maybe 10 months ago, it would have been significantly more impressive in my opinion, but with the Strix Halo 128 gigs of unified memory, you have Apple machines, which are fantastic for AI and machine learning use cases. I don't really like using them for that specific use case, but I'm a huge fan of Macs. There's Macs on the shelf behind me. There's Macs on a shelf over there that is not even on camera. I love them, just not for AI stuff. But as an outside observer, I do notice the MLX community does seem to have a lot of support for new models and implementing them on Apple Silicon machines. So that is another potent option. The Strix Halo compared to this is a very interesting kind of head-to-head, and that was really part of the reason why I wanted to do this video, is because I didn't see any just kind of like, okay, here's the same model on the same like settings in these two machines, how do they perform head-to-head? The Strix Halo still has an immature software stack, so if you want to run video generation or image generation, this is going to be essentially plug and play comparatively to the potential disaster you may find yourself with the Strix Halo. However, for doing like LLM stuff, the Strix Halo and the tests that we did was arguably the same speed for this. Now, obviously, you can bring up, well, this is designed for the FP4 NV. I purposely did not mention that in the video because for the 95% of individuals who are interested in this, it is highly likely we're just going to be browsing LM Studio for whichever models are up there, and most of them are not that specific quantization that this is going to specifically excel at. So it was kind of like a purposeful omission on my part in the quest to be more fair and kind of consumer focused when I actually try to assess this device. And really, that brings me back to the whole kind of downside here is this is too expensive in my honest opinion. If this was $2,500 with a 2 terabyte SSD instead, I think it would be an absolute no-brainer. And then say, okay, the 4 terabyte version, which I have right here, could be $3,500. I know that other manufacturers are going to have $3,000 variants and things like that, but I have to judge the price for this as what I was actually able to go and purchase myself today, which is the only model that was available, which is the $4,000 one. In addition to that, the Strix Halo that we tested in today's video was $1,700 or $1,800 at Micro Center. So if you wanted to run LLMs on a small efficient box, say you spent $1,800 on that Strix Halo, then you want to do some image or video generation. If you bought a $2,000 5090, I mean, it's kind of like I could have that Strix Halo and a 5090 or this, and for the vast majority of individual consumers out there, the or this just doesn't add up when considering all of the other available options. Don't get me wrong, I'm very, very enamored with this, but as someone who purchased it themselves and can be completely blunt and transparent about what they think about it, it's too expensive, and I can't help but be somewhat concerned at the fact that it is running a kind of very customized version of Ubuntu, and historically sometimes NVIDIA's support for older platforms has not been the best. So that is a whole nother kind of thing that you kind of have to wonder about is, okay, it works now and it's really nice, but is that software support going to be consistently stable over the course of the ownership time I have this, which historically has not been a strong point for NVIDIA. So you kind of have to just think strategically, I suppose. And those are my honest, unfiltered, and transparent thoughts about this. I'm fortunate enough that I was able to go and purchase this and actually play with it and make a video. Obviously, if you watch my channel, thank you, but you know that this is absolutely in the wheelhouse of things that I do every day, so it made sense. It was a no-brainer for me. So with that, that's going to conclude the video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments once you've subscribed. And that'll conclude it. So that's going to wrap it up. This is the DGX Spark. This is Bijan. Thanks for watching.